Welcome to the School District of Waukesha's Board of Education Teaching and Learning Committee for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. We start out with general business this evening, or this afternoon, excuse me. Stacy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it has been.
Thank you very much. Any citizens that wish to address us this afternoon?
No, we do not have any.
Moving on then to our action items. So we're looking at the first action item, approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting minutes from our May 5th meeting.
I'll move approval, Greg.
Thank you, Joe.
By Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Any discussion, questions, comments on the minutes, corrections? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote on the approval of the minutes from our meeting on May 5th. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Passes, Stacy, 4-0.
Actually, 5. Amanda joined us.
You joined us. Good. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second action item we have tonight is the annual approval of the district academic standards. This topic relates to the annual notice of student academic standards as required by the 2015 Wisconsin Act 55 to notify parents and guardians enrolled in the school district of Waukesha of the student academic standards that will be in effect for the 2020-2021 school year. We have Dan Kieser here this afternoon, our Director of Secondary Learning, that will lead us into this action item. So I'll turn it over to Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Annually, we ask for this approval as Board Member Dietz had read it. Just as a reminder, the School District of Waukesha remains committed to using rigorous standards that set high expectations for our students' performance, as well as to prepare them for college, career, and community development and success. Where we place this annual notice is a separate web page where we have all of our annual notices, and pending full board approval, we update the message in July of each year. So with that, I'll open up for any questions that board members may have.
I'll have one. Greg?
Bill, go ahead. Mr. Baumgart.
Yeah, Dan, this is not meant as a critical point. I'm just curious, with the fact that we are dealing with potential issues with the pandemic, are there any of these standards that are in critical situations because of the way we're operating?
We've built our frameworks off of each of the standards, and so we continue to work with our teachers to deliver the curriculum in a digital space. So really, we need to go back and look at what was taught and what was taught not at the level that we would have liked to, which is part of our process in looking at the start of the fall. So
okay, I guess so. There is an issue that we have to be careful with.
There's something that potentially we just need to look at it, and once we determine that, then we'll put action plans in place to address them. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dan.
Do we have a motion to approve before we have any further discussion or questions?
Move for approval of the annual district academic standards for the year 2020 to 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgart.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Como. Any other discussion, questions that we have? Dan, I really like that you referenced the specifics of the standards, not only on the homepage of the district website, but also under teaching and learning as well. So it's anyone that was truly interested in finding out more about the specifics could actually go to two places on our website, either on the homepage under annual notices or under departments, and then they go to teaching and learning, and then they're able to tap into a link that you have added to the website. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Mr. Como.
Question, are we still required to have posters in the halls? I think that was a previous method that we used to use. It was a while ago. I remember working on them with Mr. Hazley.
I can certainly look into that and follow up. My understanding is that they need to be able to be accessed. So I'll dig into that and get some more detail and get back to you.
And I don't know why I was working with Mr. Hazley on it, but he had some input into it at one point in time. So.
And I'm probably one of the oldie moldies that would remember that, Mr. Como, and I don't remember that back in my day being a school administrator. So
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else that we're required to post in that manner.
okay.
Yeah, there are probably some things that are more in the student services area than curriculum that probably have to be posted. Even that'll be a question. If we continue the way we are.
Any further discussion? Okay, at this time, I'm going to call for a vote on the approval of the district standards, academic standards for 2020-2021. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes Stacy 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Dan.
Next, we move on to our discussion information items this afternoon. We begin by talking about the Whittier Achievement Gap Reduction Grant Update. We have Brandy Hart, the principal of Whittier Elementary School, and Melissa Yao, director of elementary learning, who are with us this afternoon to lead us into this discussion information item. So I'll turn it over to both of them. Thank you for being here.
Excuse me just a moment. Melissa, you are a panelist. I'm having a little trouble with Brandy, so let me see if I can't get that to work. And just a moment. I'm not sure what's happening here. Thanks for waiting for me. I'm working on it.
If for some reason, and we of course want to see Mrs. Hart's beautiful face in this gallery here, but if
Hi, Melissa.
if for some reason you can't pull her over, I am thinking that you can still give her voice rights.
Yes.
That Melissa, I guess, or myself, because I have access. Well, you can still screen share the presentation.
I'll be sharing it in just a moment. And Brandy, you do have the microphone now, but I can't get your face on the screen right now. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Andy.
Okay, well, let's go with it right now. I'm not sure what's wrong with the system here. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so are you ready for me to share your presentation?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm working on it now.
Okay, everybody, I hope that you and all of your families are happy and well. And I am here to present on the status of the Achievement Gap Reduction Grant that Whittier has in place. So while we are getting that presentation up, just so you know, we're going to talk about why we're here. We're going to quickly talk about what the identified strategy is in use, the data that we have to share, and then our action steps for next year.
That's good.
Can everyone see the screen now?
It's black on my end.
I can't see it.
I saw Brandy though.
You did? Oh,
Yes.
Jody.
Let's try this one more time. Okay, I'm going to try to share it once more. I'm sorry this is giving us trouble today. Is that better?
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right. Stacy, you can do 2 clicks. Yeah, perfect. So the why are we here? So the AGR, the Achievement Gap Reduction Program, requires anyone that has the grant to present twice a year to talk about 2 things: how the grant is being utilized and then to share data. Due to the COVID-19 closure, DPI has recognized there won't be a ton of spring data to share, but we are still required to meet and to share the strategy and which we've selected for this year and then also for next year. You can go ahead, Stacey. So this is the same slide that I showed you last time I was here. This is the current strategy that we are using at Whittier. The strategy is to maintain small class sizes. This is the strategy that we will use next year as well, hopefully face-to-face with our students in class sizes in kindergarten through 3rd grade that are 18 students or less. Why did we choose it? Because it provides more one-on-one teacher-to-student opportunities throughout the day. Since we have no spring assessment window this year, I don't have any updates for grade levels that took the MAP assessment. So if you can think back to the last time we were together, we talked about most of our grade levels using the MAP assessment for reading and math, with the exception of kindergarten and 1st grade that were using running records. So I grabbed the data that I could find from right before we left. So this was data from March of where our kindergarten and 1st grade students were when we left. That being said, we had a lot longer of the school year to go, and we were hoping for much higher results than what you see there, highlighted in yellow. On this form, I was also asked to explain our school's experience during the COVID-19 closure. And one thing that I tried to convey is that the school district of Waukesha was prepared. And that really did provide us the ability to use what we could and what we've already had and what we were used to with the transition to virtual learning. I explained in that section towards the right when we closed, the technology that the students had, and the platforms that we used for workflow, connection, and parent engagement. You can go ahead, Stacey.
Thank you.
Since I have you, I want to make sure that I let you know that when we were together, we all ended that meeting agreeing that we needed to involve our families in our learning environment. I would say this, the closure of being face-to-face ramped up the need to connect with families even more so that we were checking on them and helping them and supporting them in anything they need while we are away. I have to shout out my teachers and my staff who did a really wonderful job in reaching out to families to support in technology needs, in school-related tasks, homework, and also just to listen. For many of our families, it's been hard to connect virtually, not because of the means. They have the iPads. We helped with Wi-Fi for families that needed help, but because a lot of our families were still working during this time. So the time they had to work with their children on school was not in the normal school day. Our families were working at night. our families were working on weekends to help students complete the workload. And I think that our staff did a really wonderful job in making themselves available to our students and families throughout all the times of the day, and just really supporting. You can click through, Stacy. During virtual week 1 and 2, we were successful in connecting and supporting all but 20 of our families. So 91% of our families were connected with support, meaning we helped get Wi-Fi if they needed that. We helped with Google Classroom. We helped with technology and WebEx. Class Dojo is an app that we currently used before the closure to make sure we're constantly connected with families. After spring break, we were up to 98% of our families. After that, we continued with checkpoints throughout. Checkpoints meaning phone calls, text messages, Class Dojo app messages, emails, WebEx. We kind of used whatever we needed to do to make sure that we were still connected with our families. You can go ahead and click, Tracy. And then since I have you here, I want to just really shout out the community building that has really happened so strongly at Whittier during the closure. And I hope to continue it just as strong in the school year. We have made sure to connect with each other, with our families, and with our own families at home, since we're working at home, and making sure that we're all connected together. We all know that strong schools have strong communities, and so we purposefully set up theme weeks throughout every single virtual week to make sure we had something super fun to look forward to while we were working together virtually. Our school families connected with their own families, not just the kids, and our own families connected, which I think was really, really special during this time. You can click one more time, Stacy. Okay, so get back to why we're here, the specific focus of this grant use. This is a very, very similar slide. You've seen it before. This is how we will start the next school year. We're going to still consider doing our coaching in reading and math with feedback, specific feedback to our teachers around small group instruction. Our planning, when teachers are planning their small groups, we're going to be working with them to make sure that we are focused on what matters. We're going to continue our growth in culturally responsive practices with PD and within our PLCs, our professional learning communities. We're going to focus on using our data to drive our instruction. Continue with regular check-ins, really have a strong focus on fidelity to instructional minutes, and make sure that our children have the opportunity to learn throughout the school day as much as possible. Our application time will look into that and making sure we have purposeful practice happening within the classroom when a child is not in a small group instruction. And then our intervention block and making sure we're using it for what our students need. Again, this slide isn't new, but this is our plan to go into next year strong with the use of this achievement gap reduction grant. I feel like I talked really fast. Maybe that's because I'm on my computer and you can't see me, I don't know. But what questions do you guys have for me or for Melissa tonight?
Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, what's it look like for next year? Is getting the good feedback from the community about enrollment for next year at your school?
I know of 2 families that are not returning because they've moved to Milwaukee within the closure, and I hope I keep every single person on my roster enrolled for next year.
Okay. So your staffing levels right now look like they're going to remain the requirements you currently have for staff. You'll have those same type of requirements going into next year?
Same sections, right?
Correct.
Yes, the same
Yeah.
section.
Okay. So what type of testing would take place in the fall when we come back?
If we come back in the fall, we will go ahead right away and test our running record levels on all students, as well as start with a MAP baseline assessment.
Okay. And how many children are scheduled to move on to middle school next year?
I have 42 children moving to the middle school.
Okay. And total enrollment in the school is how many?
229.
So So have you had any indications as to what the backfill will be as far as kids coming in? Apparently you feel you're going to be able to replace those, right?
Replace the 42 students that are leaving?
Yep.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
they,
think-
they currently have two full sections of kindergarten right now of students enrolled.
Okay. Okay, just curious and making sure that I think the school did really well the last couple of years, and I think the more the community knows about that, the better.
The 4K section is also filling up as well. They're at about 13 right now, which is on par for where Whittier is usually, and then it fills up come August.
Okay. Good. That's good.
Any other questions? Brandy, when kids leave those class sizes of 18 after third grade, do they get any additional support when they move on to fourth grade or fifth grade? Or would they be eligible for intervention or other kinds of services?
So we hold our intervention twofold. We have title. So we have intervention happening for the kids that need it most. And that could be in K3, that could be up to fourth and fifth grade if a student still needs support. Also, we have a 30-minute intervention block in all of our classrooms. So that means that fourth and fifth graders have the opportunity to have an intervention block in their classrooms, even though they don't have the ADR grant.
Sounds good. Mr. Como.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. Even though we're not required to test and look at data this spring, is there any other anecdotal evidence, things that we can see are helping our children to improve during this period of time?
I think that by talking with teachers and seeing the lesson plans that they're putting out to their kids and then the workflow coming back, the children that are engaging every single day, I think that are doing a great job. For example, our first graders are using Raz Kids. It's a program online that allows the child to read out loud, and then the reading records and sends right back to the teacher. The teacher is able to provide direct feedback to that child or to that child's family who's helping him or her to say, like, let's work on this, or just one little thing. The teachers in all grade levels, the ones that are not even using that specific app, are giving feedback to kids every single time they hand something in by the use of Google Classroom.
Okay, good. So there's a tremendous amount of interaction, and that we're hoping that as engagement and interaction is high, that learning is occurring, I guess is what you're saying.
Specific numbers, I don't have that to show you that kids are, indeed growing throughout the closure without the assessments that we usually give.
Sure. Time will tell once we get back to assessing, if we had a great amount of loss or just a small amount, or maybe it stays the same. I don't know. I think that's anybody's guess right now. So thank you for sharing that, though.
Of course.
Anyone else? Question for Brandy? Comment?
I just want to send compliments to what they're doing over there.
Sounds good, Mr. Baumgart. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, keep up the good work, Brandy. Thank you for the updates, and we'll see you back minimum of 2 times next year.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Brandy.
All right.
Thanks, Melissa. Next item we have under discussion information this afternoon is virtual learning surveys that were distributed, and we have an update on the results from Jody Landish. She is our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, and she will be presenting the results of surveys that went out to various subgroups. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Landish.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dietz. Yes, this is the weird part where you present and you cannot see the board members' faces. So please interject as necessary. I can't read your nonverbals right now, so we'll go through. I appreciate Mr. O'Brien for wanting us to gather this information. We were kind of in progress, but it helped us expedite some of the results that I have for you here today. So 3 stakeholder surveys are sort of still in progress. Parent and educator, I'll be presenting for you today. And then our student survey is still out there and still getting responses for. So I'm thinking that probably the best way I will present that will be in a board update. But I will let you know I will be giving the full board this presentation in this Friday's update. And certainly if you want more details, I can give any of you, we've done this on Qualtrics, and so I can certainly give you access to the dashboard if you would like to break it down as well. I will tell you we have given our principals their site access, which we feel is obviously the most important because I'm going to give you a really 30,000-foot view from the district's perspective. But we know that many of the action and planning can happen with sites that have very specific and relatable feedback specific to their school. So with that said, our family feedback consisted of 2,648 responses, and you can see that the makeup, as we broke down from the K2 level, 3rd through 5th grade, middle level, and high school level, was about represented about a quarter in each of those areas. So 26% at K2, 23% of respondents 3 through 5, 21% represent the middle school voice, and 24% are representing our high school voice in terms of families. In terms of access, that was one of the themes that we want to break apart to see how we're doing. We asked if students are able to access the instructional materials provided, and we're happy to say that 84% of our families say that they are able to access what the schools are giving out, both online and in print. This question about access to internet, I think, was always the magical question that we always wondered before this pandemic. What percentage of our families really did have access. And so they're reporting out that 95% of our families across the system do have access to the internet in their residence. I will say those 5%, I'm pretty confident are being targeted currently in a good way with our schools so that we can still continue to provide ways through hotspots and other means to provide them access, because we're shooting for that goal of 100% across our system. In terms of instruction, we asked questions such as, what is the amount of time your school is expecting your student to be learning each day? And so the breakdown, as you can see it, is about 2 to 3 hours represents the biggest amount of time. So 32% of our families say about 2 to 3 hours of intense learning time is what we're normally seeing. About 21% of our parents are saying that 3 to 4 hour mark. And then you can kind of see the pie chart. More than 4 hours is about 13%. So this also, when I really analyze and you try to break it down, there may be subjectivity, because although we ask them what your student's school expects, we also know there's a continuum of expectation both from parents and students regarding what is set forth by the school. But again, this just gives kind of a broad brush stroke in terms of percentages of expectations throughout each learning day. In terms of instruction around, is someone at home available to help your student with their material? And we know at home has posed different situations with the adults' jobs in the family as well. And so we are reporting that 64% say that yes, indeed, there is someone at home to help them with the learning. And 5% are in that green, and 5% are saying, no, there's no one to help. So that intermediate somewhat, maybe that means a few days a week. We don't know how that can be interpreted. But 31% are saying maybe sometimes there's somebody here to help and maybe sometimes there is not. This is a key question. Mr. Como alluded to it in the how do we know we're learning question. We ask families, is your student keeping up with their schoolwork at least as much as they were before the COVID-19 crisis? And so here you can see that 62% say yes, they are keeping up, and 14% say no, they're not keeping up as much as if they were to have been face-to-face. Subsequently, the learning piece, which we have been, all wondering, asking families, is your student learning as much as they were beforehand? And we have families saying about 41% respondingly are saying no, absolutely, they're not learning as much as they were if they were in school. 28% are saying somewhat, and 15% are saying yes. And when I get to the staff feedback, you'll see a relatable percentage in terms of what our teachers are saying about student learning as well.
Jody, isn't this a rather subjective analysis?
I would say probably. The more I dug into, and again, we took these questions from not only our brainstorming, but a DPI survey that was used throughout the state to garner feedback from all states across the, all schools across the Wisconsin system. And you really could probably poke holes either way in a lot of the questions. So again, I want to reiterate that it definitely is a broad brush perspective, Bill. And yeah, for this, you would want to ask a deeper question like, what is the evidence that you have that they're not learning as much, right? That would, I think, the next key question as we were to dig deeper.
Thank you. That's a good answer too. And I understand that.
However, I mean, you would think that would be somewhat expected because obviously it was a disruption, and you can't expect both the teachers and the students to handle disruption without some drop off instructional.
Sure, I'm just not sure about the numbers or how long that would be maintained.
Sure.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Jody, when did the survey go out?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm trying to think. Last month is when Mr. O'Brien requested this, and it was about that similar time that we were orchestrating those questions. So, over a month ago.
So this is more recent. This is recent feedback instead of like April. I mean, this is within the last month, towards the end of the school year.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So we reported on access, we reported a little bit on instruction. So the communication piece, as you know, is always important to us. So are you satisfied with the home and remote learning education provided? And here we have about 39% saying yes, 38% saying somewhat, and 20% are just not satisfied. And that's just how they feel. Has your school communicated to you how to get help with home and remote learning? This is where the percentage definitely goes up, and we're proud of this, right? Because this means that home school connection is looking good for us. So 71% are saying, yes, my school is communicating. 24% say somewhat, and only 4% are saying that that's not happening within the system. And again,
say that anyway.
Well, and our schools have the specific breakdown so they can see, we can tell who those 114 would be accountable to so that those schools can attend to that.
Great.
In terms of attendance data, I also thought this was important just in having a few conversations with some board members over this pandemic. We are still keeping track of weekly engagement and participation through attendance in our Infinite Campus portal. And so when I was preparing for this presentation, I was able to look at our year-to-date attendance, and we're sitting at 94.8% in terms of year-to-date. The last 60 days is 93.5, and the last 30 days is 93.2. So it's probably good news that we're heading towards the end here because we just have a small downward trajectory. But if you also look at the last 7 days, then we took a spike back up to 94.8. So I'm still just thoroughly proud of our student attendance and our staff
Great.
engagement. I think these are numbers that the district can be proud of.
Jody, pardon my interruption. I just got a message that Joe Como lost internet and he wanted the group to know.
Okay. And something.
Sorry, go on.
Well, let's get it over with fast then before he gets back.
Well, and something is. All right. Something is.
Jody, I will say on the, I did want to say something on the people who said they had help. If you have 95% that said they got help and somewhat help, that means you probably actually had 98 to 99%. You know, you assume the other 5%.
Sure.
Just felt like they weren't getting help, but they probably got help.
Sure. Okay, so now, and I will go back into the presentation here as we just briefly go over some of the educator feedback. Do you see this loading screen? Is that having trouble on your end as well?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to escape and go back. For whatever reason, the presentation mode seems stuck, and so I'm going to stay in the slide mode, although not ideal. I think you'll still be able to get the gist. And again, a reminder to board members, this will be printed for your board packets this Friday. So staff were able to give us 387 responses. Question 4 asks of staff, do you have enough time to complete the work that your school is asking you to do? Here we have 69% of our staff saying yes, they're able to manage that time with expectations. 26% say somewhat, and 5% say no. So again, in order to help those staff that say no and move them out of the red, again, we have really asked school sites to reach out with that specific feedback according to those few teachers who have said that's how they feel. I do not know why this is not working now. I'll just give you, again, I'm clicking on the slide and all you're seeing is staff feedback. You're not seeing my pie chart, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. When we asked staff, have you remained as effective in your role, right, in home and remote learning? And I think Mr. O'Brien kind of alluded to that. 50% of our staff saying they're able to remain effective. So, I mean, really teetering on that. Half say they can be effective in this environment, and half are saying somewhat. 19% are saying, yeah, absolutely. I can thrive in this environment just as I have. And 31% are saying, nope, not my cup of tea. I am not as effective as I could be as a teacher in that face-to-face setting. In terms of the relatable question about are your students learning as much now? As you recall, I reported the 41% of parents saying no. We have 60% of teachers saying that they don't feel that their students are learning as much as they were prior to switching to this environment. We have 33% saying somewhat and 7% saying no. So I'm just going to try give it one last college try here to see if it can load. Yeah, for some reason it's not liking the heat today. So some celebrations, I think, again, are important for our staff and for you to hear. Has your administration provided you with what you need to be effective as a teacher at home? And we have close to 80% of our staff saying absolutely yes. And 20% saying somewhat. Only three people said no. So I think that's a huge positive, both for our administrators and for our teachers. And this is also a celebration, and if you've been in Waukesha enough, you know that this is our culture. But the question was, are the educators in your school supporting each other during this home and remote learning? And 85% say yes. And we can all probably mention dozens of stories of educators supporting one another during this time. Both supporting themselves and their own children, as well as their school children. So when the open response was given, as you can see on this slide, what has your district done that has helped you? The biggest words that you see are the most people responded the most to. So the support, the WebEx, the learning, the technology, supportive, all of those verbs describe how the district has been helpful to our employees. So I again, just a brief overview, but just wanted to appreciate everybody's feedback. The surveys will remain open, and we'll continue to take responses as they come in, always adapting and always looking at the feedback. And just appreciate all the schools and the teachers and the students for what they're doing, working with families stronger together. So at this time, I will take any questions or comments from the board. And I will stop screen sharing.
Just a real shout out to Jody for all the parents that had to go above and beyond to make everything work, not only with themselves personally, but with their own jobs. And then the addition of trying to assist with lessons and the teaching of some of those and the follow-up. And it's been a real team effort on all sides. And I think as a district, we've done very well, and we should be proud of what we've accomplished.
Yeah, Greg, to pick up on your comment.
Yes, Mr. Baumgart.
I can't help but think that this will have some long-term benefits too, even if we get back to school next year. The fact that the parents this time had to get involved, and you know, and maybe for some of them it's just a matter of, I wish I had done this before. So we'll see. It's just it's a hope.
Right. Thank you. Anything else, comments or questions from other committee members? Thank you very much, Jody, for compiling all that, for sending it out, for getting that information. And then you said we'll receive that in our Friday board.
Yes, I will give you again, the current presentation will be in Friday's board packet. And as soon as we can garner a substantial amount of student responses, I will have Steve Schloman give me access to that dashboard, and we'll compile something in the coming weeks around the student responses for you.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to the rest of the agenda. Other business at this time. Do any board members have recommendations for future committee meetings? Okay. Seeing none at this time, then this meeting is going to be adjourned. I want to thank all of you for your flexibility in rescheduling this meeting. Thank you for your participation this afternoon as well. Our next Teaching and Learning Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 1st, 2020, 6 p.m. And I'm going to say at the Lindholm Building. Be very hopeful and optimistic that it'll be at Lindholm. Thanks again, everyone, for anyone that tuned in. Have a good afternoon and a good evening, and we'll see you all later. Thank you very much.
Well, everybody, take care. Thank you for your leadership.
Thanks.